The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nevada desert as Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the halls of Earth Defense Command. The building was new, built just 5 years ago when humanity first cracked faster-than-light travel. Jake had been a naval officer for 20 years, but nothing in his career had prepared him for what was about to happen. His aide, Lieutenant Commander Amy Phillips, met him at the main briefing room. Her face was pale, which was unusual for someone who had served in 3 different conflicts. "Sir, they're requesting another meeting," she said quietly. "The aliens want an answer today." Jake nodded and entered the room where President Lisa Carter was already seated at the head of a massive oak table. Around her sat the most important people on Earth. General Roy Phillips, the head of Global Defense Forces, was reviewing tactical reports on his tablet. Admiral Kate Sullivan, commander of the Space Fleet, was arguing quietly with Dr. Alan Torres, the Secretary of Science and Technology. Ambassador Nina Brooks sat silently, her hands folded, staring at the holographic display. In the center of the table, the display showed a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red dots marked coalition worlds, blue dots showed human colonies, and yellow indicated the front lines of an alien war that had been raging for over a century. The enemy, called the Devourers, were shown as black voids on the map, slowly consuming star systems as they moved through the galaxy. President Carter looked up as Jake entered. "Admiral Morrison, thank you for joining us. I assume you've read the latest intelligence reports?" Jake sat down and activated his personal display. 3 days ago, the Galactic Coalition had made first contact with humanity. The moment should have been celebrated across Earth as the greatest achievement in human history. Instead, it had become the source of the biggest crisis humanity had ever faced. The coalition consisted of dozens of alien species, but 2 dominated the organization. The Vorthak were large reptilian creatures with green scales and golden eyes that could grow to 8 feet tall. They had been spacefaring for over 2,000 years and controlled the largest military fleet in the galaxy. Their allies, the Hive Collective, were insect-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes that lived in vast underground cities on dozens of worlds. Both species had one thing in common. They were losing their war against the Devourers. "The situation hasn't changed," Jake said, scanning the reports. "They want us to contribute ships, personnel, and resources to their war effort. They're offering technology transfers and trade agreements in return." Dr. Torres leaned forward. "The technology they're offering could advance human civilization by centuries. Their fusion reactors are 3 times more efficient than ours. Their medical knowledge could eliminate most diseases. Their manufacturing processes could end scarcity across all human worlds." General Phillips shook his head. "And in return they want us to send our people to die in a war we didn't start and don't understand. We have 12 colony worlds with a total population of 800 million people. They have thousands of worlds with trillions of citizens. Why do they need us?" Ambassador Brooks finally spoke. "Because they're desperate. According to their historical records, the Devourers have consumed over 300 civilizations in the past millennium. Each time they defeat a species, they absorb their technology and become stronger. The Coalition has been fighting them for 120 years, and they're slowly losing ground." Admiral Sullivan pulled up a tactical display. "Look at these battle reports. The Devourers don't fight like any known military force. They don't have traditional ships or weapons. Instead, they use massive organic vessels that can regenerate damage and adapt to enemy tactics. They drain energy from power sources and somehow convert matter directly into more of their own kind." Jake studied the display with growing concern. The Devourer vessels looked more like giant sea creatures than spaceships. They had tentacle-like appendages that could stretch for kilometers and organic hulls that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Each major Devourer ship was accompanied by dozens of smaller organisms that moved in perfect coordination. "The Coalition's standard battle tactics aren't working," Sullivan continued. "They fight with large fleets in traditional formations, but the Devourers swarm them and drain their ships' power systems. The coalition has lost over 40% of their military strength in the past decade. President Carter stood up and walked to the window overlooking the desert. In the distance, construction crews were working on humanity's newest space dock, where the latest generation of human starships were being built. The question we need to answer is simple. Do we have a moral obligation to help other sentient species even if it puts our own people at risk? Dr. Torres activated another display showing human technological progress. If we accept their offer, we could have cities on 100 worlds within 50 years. We could cure aging, eliminate poverty, and explore the galaxy with technology. We can barely imagine. And if we refuse? President Carter asked. General Phillips answered grimly. If the coalition loses this war, the Devourers will eventually find Earth. They consume everything in their path. There's no negotiating with them, no diplomacy, no surrender. They arrive, drain a world of all energy and life, then move on to the next target. Jake looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leadership. These were good people trying to make an impossible decision. Join an alien war and risk human lives for species they had never met, or stay neutral and hope the conflict never reached their small corner of the galaxy. How long do we have to decide? President Carter asked. Ambassador Brooks checked her chronometer. The coalition delegation wants an answer in 6 hours. They're becoming impatient with our deliberations. Admiral Sullivan laughed bitterly. Impatient? We've been a spacefaring species for exactly 5 years. Most humans have never seen an alien, and these creatures want us to commit to a century-old war in less than a week. Jake stood up and walked to the tactical display. He had spent his entire adult life defending humanity, first in Earth's oceans and now among the stars. The idea of sending human ships and crews to fight in an alien war made his stomach turn. But the thought of those same creatures eventually finding Earth's colonies was even worse. What do we know about human combat capabilities compared to coalition forces? He asked. Dr. Torres pulled up comparative analyses. Our ships are smaller and less heavily armed than coalition vessels, but they're also faster and more maneuverable. Our energy shield technology is completely different from theirs. We use quantum field manipulation while they use conventional deflector screens. Our weapon systems are based on railguns and particle beams rather than their plasma cannons. Different doesn't necessarily mean better, General Phillips pointed out. These species have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've been in space for 5 minutes. President Carter returned to her seat. I've made my decision. We're going to decline their offer. The room fell silent. Jake felt a mixture of relief and concern. Relief that humanity wouldn't be drawn into an alien war, but concern about what that decision might mean for Earth's future. I'll inform the coalition delegation that humanity chooses neutrality, Ambassador Brooks said. We wish them success in their conflict, but we cannot participate at this time. As the meeting ended and the advisors filed out, Jake remained behind. With President Carter, do you think we're making the right choice? He asked. She stared at the star map, where the black voids representing the Devourers seemed to be slowly expanding. I hope so, Admiral. I really hope so. But I have a feeling this won't be the end of our involvement in this war. Jake nodded. Grimly, the galaxy has a way of not caring about what we want. Outside, the Nevada sun was setting, casting the desert in shades of red and gold. In a few hours, Ambassador Brooks would deliver humanity's answer to the coalition delegation. Earth would remain neutral, focusing on defending its own worlds and people. It seemed like the right decision. It seemed like the safe decision. But, as Jake would learn in the months to come, when you live in a galaxy at war, safety is just an illusion, and the right decision is often the one that leads to the most unexpected consequences. 6 months had passed since Earth refused to join the Galactic War. Commander Ben Taylor stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching the sunrise over Kepler 442b. The planet below was a beautiful green and blue world that humanity had been terraforming for 3 years. Massive atmospheric processors worked day and night to make the air breathable, while automated farming systems covered entire continents with crops that would feed millions. Harmony Station orbited the planet like a small city in space. Home to 50,000 people, it served as the command center for the entire terraforming operation. Engineers, farmers, scientists, and their families lived and worked together in the station's rotating sections that provided artificial gravity. Children played in the parks between the residential areas, while their parents managed the complex systems that were slowly turning a dead world into humanity's newest home. Ben had been commander of Harmony Station for 2 years. Before that, he had served as a fighter pilot in Earth's Navy, protecting shipping lanes from pirates and raiders. When humanity began expanding to the stars, he volunteered for colonial service because he wanted to help build something instead of just protecting it. The transition from military officer to civilian administrator had been difficult, but he loved watching families build new lives among the stars. The morning started like any other. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson reported that the atmospheric processors were running at optimal efficiency. Security Chief Carlos Rivera noted that the supply convoy from Earth was running 3 days behind schedule, but nothing unusual. Dr. Patricia Wong in the science section was excited about new mineral discoveries on the planet's southern continent that could speed up the terraforming process by several years. Ben was reviewing monthly production reports when Lieutenant Sam Parker burst into his office. The young communications officer looked terrified, which immediately got Ben's attention. Sam had served on border patrol ships before joining the colonial service and wasn't easily frightened. "Commander, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system," Sam said, his voice shaking. "Multiple contacts, sir. They just dropped out of hyperspace near the outer asteroid belt." Ben followed Sam to the communications center, where the main display showed the system scanner results. 12 large objects had appeared suddenly where empty space had been moments before. Each contact was enormous, easily the size of a coalition dreadnought, but the energy patterns were completely different from any known ship design. "Are they coalition vessels?" Ben asked, though he already suspected the answer. Mary Johnson looked up from her scanner console. "No, sir. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database. The ships aren't showing any standard identification signals, and they're not responding to our hail attempts." Ben stared at the display as the unknown vessels began moving toward the inner system. They were heading directly for Harmony Station and the planet below. "How long until they reach us?" "At current speed, approximately 3 hours," Mary replied. "But, sir, there's something else. The scanner readings are strange. These ships don't seem to be made of metal or any conventional materials. The computer is having trouble determining their exact composition." Carlos Rivera joined them in the communications center, carrying a rifle and wearing his security uniform. "Commander, I've placed all security teams on alert and begun evacuation preparations." "But, sir, we don't have anywhere to evacuate to. The transport ships are all down on the planet, and they couldn't carry 50,000 people anyway." Ben nodded grimly. Harmony Station was designed as a peaceful civilian facility. They had basic defensive shields and a few small patrol craft for asteroid deflection, but nothing that could fight off a military attack. The station's escape pods could only hold about 5,000 people, and they weren't equipped for long range. "Travel. Send an emergency transmission to Earth Defense Command," Ben ordered. "Tell them we have unknown hostile contacts approaching Harmony Station. Request immediate military assistance." Sam worked frantically at his communications console. "Message sent, sir. But the nearest Earth defense fleet is 18 hours away, even at maximum speed." Ben looked around the room at his staff. These people had volunteered to help build humanity's future among the stars. They were engineers and scientists and farmers, not soldiers. But as the unknown ships approached, Ben realized they might have to fight whether they were prepared for it or not. 2 hours passed with agonizing slowness. The unknown vessels continued their steady approach while Ben and his staff made what preparations they could. They raised the station's defensive shields to maximum power and armed the few weapon systems designed for asteroid clearing. Civilian personnel were moved to the station's central core where they would be safest during an attack. Dr. Wong made a disturbing discovery while analyzing the approaching ships. "Commander, I've been studying the scanner data, and I think these might be the devourers that the Coalition warned us about. The organic composition, the energy absorption patterns, everything matches the intelligence reports we received during the first contact negotiations." Ben felt his blood run cold. The Devourers were supposed to be fighting the Coalition on the other side of the galaxy. What were they doing in human space? Earth had refused to join the war specifically to avoid this kind of situation. "Why would they attack us?" Carlos asked. "We're not part of the Coalition. We have no strategic value to their war effort." "Maybe they don't care about politics," Mary suggested. "From what the Coalition told us, the Devourers consume everything in their path. They might not distinguish between Coalition worlds and neutral systems. When the Devourers reached visual range, everyone on the station could see them through the observation windows. They looked nothing like traditional spaceships. Each vessel resembled a massive sea creature floating through space. Their hulls were dark and seemed to pulse with internal light. Long tentacle-like appendages extended from their main bodies, reaching toward the station like grasping fingers. "They're not using any communication frequencies," Sam reported. "No attempt to establish contact or make demands. They're just approaching." Ben watched as the lead Devourer ship extended several tentacles toward Harmony Station. The appendages were easily a kilometer long and seemed to be analyzing the station's defensive systems. "All civilian personnel to emergency shelters immediately. Security teams to defensive positions." The first tentacle made contact with the station's outer hull, and immediately alarms began sounding throughout the facility. "They're draining our power," Mary shouted over the noise. "The energy is being pulled directly through the hull into their ship." Ben had read the Coalition reports about Devourer attack patterns. They would drain a facility's power systems, then begin consuming the structural materials and finally the inhabitants themselves. Everything would be absorbed and converted into more Devourer organisms, but something unexpected happened. As the Devourer tentacles pressed against Harmony Station's hull, they encountered the quantum field shields that protected all human facilities. The energy-draining effect suddenly stopped working. "Commander, their tentacles can't penetrate our shields," Mary reported with surprise. "Whatever they're using to drain energy isn't compatible with our quantum field technology." Ben stared at the display in amazement. For the first time since the Galactic War began, someone had found a defense that actually worked against the Devourers. The organic ships seemed confused, pressing their tentacles harder against the shields but unable to break through. "How long can our shields hold?" Ben asked. "Unknown, sir. They're trying different approaches, and I think they're adapting. But for now, we're safe." Ben activated the station-wide communication system. "Attention all personnel. The enemy has been temporarily stopped by our defensive systems. Remain in your emergency positions while we assess the situation." Outside the station, the Devourer ships began circling like predators studying their prey. They had expected an easy meal and instead found something they couldn't immediately consume. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Devourers had been forced to pause and reconsider their attack, but Ben knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The creatures were clearly adapting their approach. Soon they would find a way through the shields, and then Harmony Station and everyone aboard would face the same fate as hundreds of other worlds. In 18 hours, Earth Defense Fleet would arrive to find either a thriving human colony or empty space where 50,000 people used to live. The Devourers had made their choice to attack humanity's children. Now Ben and his people would discover what that choice would cost them all. The emergency alert reached Earth Defense Command at exactly 14 minutes past midnight Pacific Standard Time. Admiral Jake Morrison was pulled from sleep by his personal communicator, buzzing with the highest priority signal possible. Within minutes, he was racing through the empty corridors of the command center while his staff scrambled to activate the crisis response protocols. The main operations room buzzed with activity as officers and analysts tried to make sense of the incoming data from Harmony Station. Lieutenant Commander Amy Phillips met Jake at the central command console where holographic displays showed the tactical situation in real time. "Sir, we have 12 hostile contacts attacking Harmony Station," Amy reported. Commander Taylor confirms they match Devourer ship profiles from Coalition intelligence files. The station's shields are holding for now, but the enemy appears to be adapting their attack methods. Jake stared at the display showing Harmony Station surrounded by organic alien ships. 50,000 human beings were trapped in space with nowhere to run. The nearest Earth Defense Fleet ships were still 17 hours away at maximum speed. "Get me President Carter immediately," Jake ordered, "and activate all reserve fleets. I want every available ship moving toward Harmony Station within the hour." While his staff coordinated the military response, Jake studied the tactical reports. From the station, the Devourers had somehow found humanity's most remote colony and attacked without warning. This wasn't random. Somebody or something had directed them to human space. President Carter arrived at the command center 40 minutes later, still wearing civilian clothes and looking like she hadn't slept. General Roy Phillips and Admiral Kate Sullivan were already there, along with Dr. Alan Torres and several other key advisors. "What's the situation?" Carter asked as she took her position at the command table. Jake activated the main display. 12 Devourer ships attacked Harmony Station 6 hours ago. The station's quantum shields are currently holding, but intelligence suggests the enemy will eventually adapt and break through. We have 17 hours before our nearest fleet arrives. General Phillips pulled up deployment charts. "I'm mobilizing the 4th Marine Division for possible boarding actions. If any civilians survive the initial attack, we'll need ground forces to evacuate them." Dr. Torres was studying the technical readouts from Harmony Station. "This is remarkable. Our quantum field technology is actually stopping the Devourer's energy drain attacks. According to these readings, they've never encountered anything like our shield systems before. How long can the shields hold?" Carter asked. "Unknown," Torres replied. "The Devourers are trying different approaches. They're learning from each failed attempt. Eventually, they'll find a way through." Jake looked around the room at Earth's leadership. 6 months ago, they had chosen neutrality to keep humanity safe from the Galactic War. Now, the war had found them anyway and was threatening innocent civilians. "Madam President, I need authorization to mobilize all Earth Defense Forces," Jake said. "Not just for a rescue mission, but for full military action against the Devourers." Carter stared at the tactical display for a long moment. The decision she was about to make would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "What are you recommending, Admiral?" "Total war," Jake replied without hesitation. "They attacked our civilians, they came for our families. I recommend we show them exactly what humanity is capable of when we're properly motivated." Admiral Sullivan stepped forward. "Sir, we have 12 colonial defense fleets scattered across human space. If we coordinate properly, we could assemble the largest human military force in our history." General Phillips nodded. "Every human world will contribute ships and personnel once they learn what happened at Harmony Station. Nobody attacks our children and gets away with it." President Carter walked to the window overlooking the Nevada desert where Earth's newest starships were under construction. She thought about Commander Taylor and the 50,000 people trapped on Harmony Station. She thought about families and children who had volunteered to help build humanity's future among the stars. "As of this moment, Earth is at war with the Devourers," Carter announced. "Admiral Morrison, you have unlimited authority to coordinate our military response." "General Phillips, prepare for full mobilization. Dr. Torres, I want crash programs to weaponize our quantum field technology." The next 12 hours transformed human space into a military operation unlike anything the species had ever seen. Every colony world activated their defense fleets. Civilian ships were converted into troop transports and supply vessels. Factories that built farming equipment began producing weapons and ammunition. Instead, Jake coordinated the response from Earth Defense Command while reports flooded in from across human territory. The Mars Colonial Fleet was already moving to Rendezvous with the Third Fleet. The Alpha Centauri Defense Force had deployed every available ship. Even the remote mining colonies around, Volf 359 were sending their small patrol craft to help. Captain Steve Rogers aboard the battleship. Constitution led the advance force racing toward Harmony Station. His ships had been conducting training exercises when the alert came through. Now they were pushing their engines beyond safe limits to reach the battle as quickly as possible. Admiral, we're receiving updates from Harmony Station, Amy reported. The Devourers have begun a coordinated assault on the station's shields. Commander Taylor estimates they have maybe 4 hours before the defenses fail. Jake studied the timeline. Even at maximum speed, the Constitution and her escorts wouldn't arrive for another 6 hours. Unless something changed dramatically, they would arrive to find empty space where Harmony Station used to be. Dr. Wong in the research division made a crucial discovery while analyzing the sensor data from the battle. Admiral, I've been studying how the Devourers are attacking the quantum shields. They're using some kind of adaptive technology that learns from each failed attempt. Can we help the station improve their defenses? Jake asked. Possibly. If we transmit new shield modulation frequencies, it might buy them more time. The Devourers would have to start their learning process over again with each frequency change. Jake immediately authorized the transmission. Every few minutes, Earth Defense Command sent new shield configurations to Harmony Station. Each time the Devourers adapted to one frequency, the humans switched to another. News of the attack spread across Earth and the colonies within hours. President Carter addressed humanity from the Emergency Operations Center, her words broadcast to every human world simultaneously. Citizens of Earth and the colonies, 6 hours ago, alien forces attacked Harmony Station and 50,000 of our people. These creatures known as Devourers have spent centuries consuming entire civilizations across the galaxy. Today they made the mistake of threatening our families. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Earth is going to war. Not because we seek conquest or glory, but because somebody decided to attack our children. Every human world, every human ship, every human citizen is now part of this fight. We will show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's children. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Civilian volunteers flooded recruitment centers on every world. Retired military personnel returned to active duty. Corporate shipyards began producing military vessels around the clock. In less than 24 hours, humanity had mobilized for total war. Admiral Morrison received reports from across human space as the massive mobilization continued. The Luna orbital shipyards had increased production by 300%. The Titan research facility was developing new weapons based on quantum field technology. Colonial governments were organizing supply convoys to support the war effort. But the most important report came from Captain Rogers aboard the Constitution. Admiral, we've made contact with Harmony Station. Commander Taylor reports the shields are still holding, but barely. We'll be in weapons range in 3 hours. Jake looked at the tactical display showing dozens of human ships converging on the Harmony system. The Devourers had attacked one isolated station and triggered a response from an entire civilization. They had knocked on the wrong door. All ships are authorized to engage the moment they enter weapons range, Jake ordered. Show these creatures what humanity does to anyone who threatens our families. In 3 hours, the Devourers would discover that attacking human civilians was the biggest mistake they had ever made. The species that had refused to join the Galactic War was about to show the galaxy exactly what human beings were capable of when properly motivated. The hunt was about to begin. Captain Steve Rogers felt the Constitution shudder as her engines pushed beyond their designed limits. The massive battleship and her escort fleet had been racing through hyperspace for 16 hours, desperate to reach Harmony Station before the Devourer attack succeeded. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Parker worked frantically to keep the overtaxed systems from failing completely. "Captain, we're dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, reported Lieutenant Commander David Chin from the navigation console. "Harmony Station should be directly ahead." Steve gripped his command chair as the Constitution and her escorts emerged into normal space. The tactical display immediately lit up with contacts. Harmony Station was still there, its lights shining like a beacon in the darkness. But surrounding it were the 12 Devourer ships, their organic hulls pulsing with alien energy as they continued their assault on the station's failing shields. "All ships, battle stations," Steve ordered over. "The fleet communication channel? Target the largest Devourer vessel and attack immediately. Do not give them time to adapt to our weapons." The human ships opened fire as they closed the distance to the battle. Railgun projectiles and particle beams struck the nearest Devourer ship, but the organic hull seemed to absorb the impact with minimal damage. The creature turned toward the approaching human fleet, extending massive tentacles that reached across space like grasping arms. "Captain, conventional weapons aren't working," reported Weapons Officer Lieutenant Sarah Williams. "The organic hulls are adapting to our attack patterns." Steve watched as the Devourer ships began moving to surround his fleet. These creatures had been fighting galactic civilizations for centuries and knew how to handle traditional military tactics, but they had never faced humans before. "All ships, execute scatter pattern Delta," Steve commanded. "Do not engage in direct confrontation. Hit-and-run tactics only." The human fleet broke apart, with individual ships darting between the much larger Devourer vessels. Captain Linda Hayes aboard the cruiser Defiant led 3 destroyers in a high-speed attack run, firing at the enemy's sensor clusters before vanishing into the asteroid field. Commander Frank Miller's Marine assault ship targeted the tentacle appendages, severing several before retreating beyond the creature's reach. This was not how the Coalition fought the Devourers. Their massive fleets tried to overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower and numbers. But humans had learned warfare differently. They were persistence hunters who tracked their prey across impossible distances, studying weaknesses and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Dr. Patricia Wong aboard the Constitution analyzed every sensor reading from the battle. While the other ships kept the Devourers busy, she studied their organic composition and energy patterns. "Captain, I think I found something. These ships aren't individual vessels. They're connected somehow, like parts of a larger organism." "What do you mean?" Steve asked as he watched his ships continue their harassing attacks. The smaller Devourer ships take orders from the larger ones. It's like a hive mind or collective consciousness. If we could disrupt that connection, the smaller vessels might become confused or disorganized. Steve studied the tactical display. The largest Devourer ship was positioned in the center of the formation, with the others arranged around it like guards protecting a queen. "Can our weapons target whatever system they're using to communicate?" "I need more data," Wong replied. "We need to get close enough to scan their internal structure." Steve made a decision that would have seemed insane to Coalition commanders, but made perfect sense to a human military officer. "All ships, prepare for boarding action." "We're going inside one of those things." The Marine assault ship commanded by Colonel Frank Miller was designed specifically for hostile boarding operations. While the other human vessels continued their hit-and-run attacks, Miller's ship approached the smallest Devourer vessel from its blind spot. Cutting through the organic hull with plasma torches, 20 Marines in powered armor forced their way. Inside the alien ship, what they found was unlike anything in human experience. The interior of the Devourer ship was filled with pulsing organic corridors that seemed alive. Strange lights moved through transparent tubes that might have been blood vessels or nerve pathways. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with a rhythm that resembled a massive heartbeat. "Colonel Miller to Constitution," Frank reported over the communication system. "We're inside the enemy vessel. The interior is completely organic. It's like being inside a giant living creature." Dr. Wong monitored the Marines' sensor readings from the Constitution. "Colonel, can you locate anything that looks like a control center or communication system?" The Marines moved deeper into the Devourer ship, following the largest nerve pathway toward what appeared to be the creature's brain. They encountered no resistance because the ship wasn't designed to be boarded. The Devourers had never needed Internal defenses because no species had ever successfully penetrated their hulls before. Frank led his team into a large chamber filled with pulsing organic computers that seemed to be made of living tissue. Strange symbols flowed across bioluminescent displays that looked more like internal organs than electronic screens. Dr. Wong, I think we found their command center. Can you plant the disruption device? Wong asked. She had modified a quantum field generator to emit specific electromagnetic frequencies that might interfere with the creature's nervous system. Frank activated the device and placed it against the largest organic computer. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the Devourer ship. The walls started convulsing violently, and the lights in the nerve pathways began flashing in distress patterns. All Marines, immediate evacuation, Frank ordered. This thing is having some kind of seizure. The Marines fought their way back through corridors that were now actively trying to expel them. The ship's immune system had finally recognized the intrusion and was attempting to eliminate the foreign organisms. Organic barriers grew across passages while acidic fluids began flooding the interior spaces. Frank and his team barely made it back to their assault ship before the Devourer vessel began spinning out of control. The creature that had been part of a coordinated attack formation was now thrashing wildly, unable to maintain its position or follow orders from the larger ships. It worked, Dr. Wong announced from her position aboard the Constitution. The smaller Devourer ships are losing coordination. They're no longer responding to commands from the larger vessels. Steve watched as the enemy formation began falling. Apart, without their hive mind connection, the individual Devourer ships became confused and vulnerable. They had evolved to fight as a collective organism, but when that connection was severed, they became much less effective. All ships, target the isolated vessels, Steve ordered. Don't let them regroup or reestablish communication. The human fleet attacked with renewed intensity, focusing their fire on Devourer ships that had been cut off from the collective. Without coordination from the larger vessels, the smaller creatures couldn't adapt their defenses quickly enough to counter. Human tactics. One by one, the Devourer ships began retreating from the battle. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the creatures that had terrorized civilizations for centuries were running away from a fight. Commander Taylor aboard Harmony Station watched in amazement as the alien ships that had threatened his people began withdrawing from the system. Constitution, this is Harmony Station. The Devourers are retreating. All civilians are safe and accounted for. Steve allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before returning to tactical concerns. Dr. Wong, did we learn anything that might help in future battles? Yes, sir. The Devourers are vulnerable when their communication systems are disrupted. They fight as a collective organism, but individually they're much weaker. We can use this knowledge to develop new weapons and tactics. As the human fleet regrouped around Harmony Station, Steve realized that this battle had changed everything. Humanity had not only defeated the Devourers but had discovered how to fight them effectively. The creatures that had consumed hundreds of civilizations had finally met their match. The galaxy was about to learn that when you threatened human families, you didn't just face human weapons or human ships. You face human intelligence, human adaptability, and the relentless determination of a species that never gave up once they decided to fight. The hunt had begun, and humanity had drawn first blood. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battleship Washington as the largest human fleet in history approached the Magellan Cluster. 3 months had passed since the battle at Harmony Station, and humanity's war against the Devourers had transformed from a desperate rescue mission into a systematic hunting campaign across multiple star systems. The fleet around him represented the combined military might of every human world. 200 ships from Earth Defense Forces, colonial defense fleets, and converted civilian vessels had gathered for this final assault on the Devourer home base. Captain Steve Rogers commanded the Constitution at the fleet's center, while Admiral Kate Sullivan led the heavy cruiser squadron from aboard the Yorktown. Intelligence reports indicated that the Devourers had retreated to a massive feeding ground they had established around a dying red giant star. Satellite reconnaissance showed hundreds of organic ships clustered around energy collection stations that were slowly draining the star's remaining power. If the creatures succeeded in consuming the entire star, they would have enough energy to rebuild their forces and continue their galactic conquest. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the cluster," reported Lieutenant Commander Amy Phillips from the sensor station. "The Devourers have been busy. They've built some kind of megastructure around the star." Jake studied the tactical display showing the enemy positions. The Devourer fleet was arranged in concentric rings around their star-draining operation, with the largest ships positioned closest to the energy source. "Dr. Wong, what's your assessment of their defensive capabilities?" Dr. Patricia Wong had spent the past 3 months developing new weapons based on their discoveries at Harmony Station. Her neural disruption technology could now be mounted on ship-based weapon systems, allowing human vessels to attack the Devourer hive mind directly. "Sir, the megastructure appears to be one enormous organic entity," Wong reported. "If we can disrupt its central nervous system, the entire operation should collapse. But we'll need to get close enough to target the core structure." "Captain," Rogers opened a communication channel from the Constitution. "Admiral, my scouts report heavy Devourer patrols throughout the outer system." "They know we're coming and they're ready for us?" Jake looked around the bridge at his officers. "These people have volunteered to fight in a war that humanity never wanted, against an enemy that threatened not just human worlds but all life in the galaxy." The Coalition species that had once dismissed Earth's military capabilities were now begging for human assistance in their own territories. "All ships begin final approach," Jake ordered. "Remember, our goal is to destroy the star-draining operation, not engage in prolonged fleet combat. Hit hard, hit fast, and get out before they can coordinate a response." The human fleet accelerated toward the cluster, spreading out into the attack formation that had proven so effective against Devourer forces. Instead of the massive formations favored by Coalition fleets, human ships operated in small, independent groups that could adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions. The first contact came when Devourer patrol ships detected the approaching human vessels. Unlike their previous encounters, these creatures didn't immediately attack. They had learned to fear human tactics and were trying to coordinate with their larger ships before engaging. Commander Linda Hayes led the advanced destroyer squadron in a diversionary attack on the outer defense ring. Her ships struck fast and hard at the Devourer communication nodes before retreating beyond their weapon range. This forced the enemy fleet to respond, drawing their attention away from the main human force. Colonel Frank Miller commanded the Marine Assault Group aboard specially modified ships designed to penetrate the Devourer megastructure. His mission was to plant neural disruption devices throughout the organic complex, while the fleet kept the defensive forces busy. "Colonel Miller to Fleet Command," Frank reported as his assault ships approached the star-draining structure. "Beginning penetration of enemy defenses. The structure is even larger than our estimates suggested. It's going to take time to reach the central core." Jake watched the tactical display as the battle developed across multiple fronts. Human ships engaged Devourer forces throughout the cluster, while Miller's Marines fought their way into the massive organic structure. The creatures were adapting to human tactics, but they couldn't counter the speed and flexibility that made humanity so effective in combat. Dr. Wong monitored the assault from her position aboard the Washington. "Admiral," Colonel Miller's teams have successfully placed disruption devices in 12 key locations, but the structure is fighting back. It's trying to isolate the damaged sections and continue operating with reduced capacity. How many more devices do we need to place?" Jake asked. "At least 6 more in critical locations." "But sir, the Devourer fleet is converging on our position. They're willing to sacrifice their outer defenses to protect the star-draining operation." Jake made the decision that would determine the outcome of the entire war. "All ships, full assault on the megastructure. Ignore the Devourer fleet and focus everything on destroying that installation." The human fleet converged on the organic complex like a pack of wolves attacking their prey. Ship after ship launched their neural disruption weapons at the pulsing structure, while marine assault teams continued their infiltration mission deep inside the creature's body. Captain Rogers led the Constitution in a direct attack on what appeared to be the structure's primary brain center. Washington, this is Constitution. We're in position for final assault on the central core. Requesting permission to use the experimental quantum torpedo. Jake knew the quantum torpedo was untested in actual combat, but conventional weapons weren't strong enough to penetrate the core's defenses. Permission granted, Constitution. Fire when ready. The quantum torpedo struck the Devourer structure's central brain with devastating effect. The entire megastructure convulsed as neural pathways throughout its body were severed by the quantum field disruption. Organic systems that had operated in perfect coordination for centuries suddenly lost all connection to their central command system. All Devourer ships are losing formation, reported Amy Phillips. They're behaving like the individual creatures we encountered at Harmony Station. The hive-mind connection has been completely severed. Jake watched as hundreds of Devourer ships began drifting aimlessly through space, no longer able to coordinate their actions or respond to threats. For the first time in galactic history, the collective consciousness that had terrorized civilizations for over a millennium had been shattered. Admiral, the star-draining operation is collapsing, Dr. Wong announced. The megastructure is breaking apart. The Devourers are retreating from the system. Jake activated the fleet communication system. All ships, mission accomplished. The Devourer collective has been broken. Begin search and rescue operations for any surviving Coalition prisoners, then prepare for return to human space. 3 days later, Jake stood in the conference room aboard the orbital station New Geneva, meeting with representatives from the Galactic Coalition. The same alien ambassadors who had once threatened Earth for refusing to join their war now spoke with deep respect for human military capabilities. The Vorthok ambassador, his scales now a respectful blue-green color, addressed the human delegation. Admiral Morrison, your species has accomplished what the Coalition could not achieve in over a century of warfare. You have not just defeated the Devourers, you have eliminated them as a galactic threat. President Lisa Carter, who had traveled to the station for the historic meeting, replied carefully, "The war is over, but the cost was significant for all our species. Humanity lost over 200,000 military personnel and 50,000 civilians. We hope the galaxy has learned from this conflict." Jake thought about the families on Harmony Station who had been the first targets of Devourer aggression. Their attack on human civilians had triggered a response that ultimately saved countless Coalition worlds from destruction. The creatures had made one critical mistake when they decided to knock on humanity's door. "The galaxy now understands," the Vorthok ambassador continued, "that Earth's children possess something unique among sentient species. You have the determination of persistence hunters who never abandon their prey, combined with the intelligence to adapt and overcome any obstacle." Jake nodded grimly. "We didn't want this war, but when you threatened our families, you discovered what humanity is capable of when properly motivated. The Devourers learned too late that attacking human children was the biggest mistake they could possibly make." As the meeting concluded and the various species prepared to return to their homeworlds, Jake looked out at the stars where human ships now patrolled alongside Coalition vessels. The war was over, but humanity had earned its place not as junior members of the galactic community, but as the species other civilizations called when the impossible needed to be accomplished. The aliens had knocked on the wrong door, and the galaxy would never be the same.